Irashaimase. Hello and welcome to Fataris' Kitchen. I'm your host, Chef Fataris. It's time we'll scan for Shoot 'em Up Saturday, and on the menu this week we have Espgaluda 2, another excellent cave shoot 'em up available on the Switch. What kind of taste will it have? Let's get cooking and find out. From developer Cave, Espgaluda 2 originally released to arcades in 2005. It would see several other ports over the years, including ones for feature phones, and the version that this one is based off of, the Xbox 360 port. So, jump to 2021, and that port is now available on the Nintendo Switch, and before I go any further, if you're a fan of shoot 'em ups and you like bullet hells at all, this is one you need in your collection. Especially with the value that this particular release offers you, in my opinion, it needs to be on your Nintendo Switch. Just hands down, if you like bullet hells, if you love shoot 'em ups, get this game. That's just all I've got to say. So that said, this one is very, and in some ways it's kind of like got that formulaic cave feel, but it just has some really interesting, unique systems that I feel definitely makes it stand out from some of the other ones that I've played. So that said, let's dive into this awesome title and see what we have. Starting up the game, we're taken to this main menu here, and we have a couple awesome options. So mainly, we've got the play game, and then there's a score attack. So it looks deceptively simple here. There is a tutorial which is kind of helpful in figuring out the difficult systems of this game. I say kind of because the localization for this game isn't great. You can kind of see that even from the credits here. So if you go to the credits, down in the options there it says View Mushihime-sama credits. That's not correct. So, the localization effort could have been better. That said, this is still an excellent shoot 'em up and it's well worth your money, despite all that. So, the meat of the game is all under the play menu, and it doesn't show it here, but when you click on that, bam! Look at how many different options, how many different versions you have to play this game. There's the normal version, which is basically the upgraded 360 version of the arcade title. There's the original arcade title itself. There's novice versions of both the normal mode, so the 360 mode, and the Black Label mode, which they created for the 360 version. You have the Black Label version, and you also have this awesome Arrange version. I love this one, and I'll get to why in just a little bit. And once you've completed a playthrough, you unlock the Enomake mode. There's just so much game here. That's why I'm saying this title is an excellent value. So right off the bat, I'll show you the normal mode and try and explain the mechanics as best I can, as there's a lot of depth to the systems here. So much so that I'm having a really hard time wrapping my head around it in just a couple days that I've been playing this title. Ignore this warning here. It's, like, since it's no longer an arcade board or even Xbox 360 port, that's like irrelevant. Starting the game, pressing start here, we're taken to this menu here. So it's kind of a menu within a menu. One thing I do have to note, so if you want to go and change the screen size or even orientation, this is where you're going to do it. You go in here to screen, you can go and have smoothing on, smoothing off, change your positions, or even change the actually, is it here? Well, there is the ability to go and change this to Tate if that's what you're looking to play. Just something to keep in mind. You can also go and change some of the game configurations, so your lives, your difficulty settings, extend, all of that, as well as your controller settings and some general screen. So this is where we can rotate the screen. There's also the ability to turn on some extra score details as well if you're looking to kind of enhance your score attack like potential. That's definitely a great way to do it. Not quite on the level of an M2 shot triggers, but still close. So starting the game itself, we're taken to the character select, and there are 3 characters you can select from. There's Asagi, Ageha, and Tateha. So Asagi and Ageha have more powerful lasers, less powerful shots, and Tateha has more powerful shot, less powerful lasers. So they're even represented in different colors here in the character. Well, actually, no, that's first player. Never mind that. But like that's the breakdown of how the characters work. So it's important to keep in mind which character you want to pick based off of the playstyle you want to use in the game itself. Then, this is part of why I'm saying the localization isn't great. You have a really detailed tutorial before you start up the game explaining the game's systems, but it's untranslated. If you want this translation, you have to go to the tutorial itself. So a little bit lazy there. I wish they could have done something about that, because there are some places where the game, text in the game is translated. Well, anyway, setting that aside, skipping past this and starting the game, we have our little introduction section here. So I'm going to try and go through all the mechanics as fast as I can. So initially, as I was mentioning, we have a shot. And fortunately, there is an auto shot button. So on the Switch, that's bound to Y. You have your regular shot with B, which you can just tap fire. But hold that down, and you get what's like this game refers to as the rapier, basically your laser, which also provides you with your focus. Another thing to note is when you're in focus, you also can see your hitbox, so that's something to keep in mind. In addition to that, there's also a button which will turn on Ascension mode, which we'll get to talking about here shortly, and also this guard button, which will create a shield around you. When you have that shield, you can absorb enemy bullets, and then when you release the guard, you return back the fire to the enemy. The more bullets you've absorbed, the more damage that does. So very, very useful on bosses. So you might have noticed as we're destroying all these enemies, we're collecting all these various stones, shards, crystals, depending on how you want to go and translate them. These are the Ascension crystals, which will ultimately count up in this particular mode to 500. Depending on which mode you're playing, it can actually be higher than that. So there are also a couple different power-ups you can pick up. There's like power-up, max power-ups as well. So here we find ourselves fighting the first boss. So admittedly not being very familiar with the story of the original Espgaluda, I'm kind of lost in what's going on here, because this takes place as almost a direct sequel to the first title. The boss fight itself is pretty awesome, and it gives us a little bit of a chance to start talking about Ascension. So Ascension is basically kind of like using those crystals that we've earned up throughout the course of the stage to access kind of like a bullet time. So it slows down the enemy movements, it slows down the enemy shots, giving you the ability to dodge around them. In addition to that, it also gives you some higher scoring potential. So what you do is when you destroy an enemy, all their bullets on screen are canceled out and are turned into gold, which is worth points in the end. There's also a few other things you can go and do if you have both Ascension crystals and gold. By the way, Ascension, is termed different ways depending on which translations you're looking at, even within this game. Anyway, I'll get to that in just a quick moment. But an interesting element of that is if you happen to be in your Ascension mode, and as you can see there, the crystal counters on the left is counting down to 0. If that counter hits 0, then we run into a situation where we're now in Ascension over. And this one has multiple levels where the bullets that the enemies fire just get faster and faster, and you can cancel out of that by pressing the Ascension button. So it's kind of like a penalty mode, but at the same time there's advantages because your score is counting up as long as you're not in a boss fight there. Some really weird, mechanics that's a kind of high risk, high reward. And I feel most of the scoring mechanics in this game totally fit that idea, high risk, high reward. Also, when you are in Ascension, you do have auto guard as well turned on, but only when you're in Ascension mode. So if I happen to get hit here, I'll auto guard. It's useful. There's also another interesting little element to Ascension. When you go into Ascension mode, your character changes gender. So you go from the female, in this case of Asagi here, you go from her like female aspect to her like male aspect. Then for Agaha, let's say you go from a male to a female, etc., etc. Just an interesting little like bit. And then there's also another version of Ascension that you can activate where when you destroy enemies, they'll have revenge bullets, but if you destroy another enemy, then like those shots will get canceled out, resulting in like more gold and higher points. And like the scoring potential is off the charts, but at the same time, mastering all the systems this game has is not going to go and be something you do overnight. So that said, let's jump modes and have a look at what Black Label brings to the table. So here we are playing the Black Label version of Espgaluda 2 on this port. So the important thing to note is that Black Label was one that was specifically developed for the consoles, and it kind of like in a lot of ways this is actually the friendlier to a beginner mode for Espgaluda 2. It adds quite a few different like changes to the mechanics. So for one thing, when you defeat enemies, the bullets are canceled out and their bullets become gold, as well as like having multiplier. Kind of like what happens when you're in Ascension mode. In addition to that, well, for one thing, this mode can only be played single player, whereas the other modes in the game are all like capable of playing two-player. And part of it is that like some of the screen real estate, specifically at the bottom there, which is where your guard gauge is, on the right side there, it's actually replaced by what's referred to as the absolute invulnerability gauge, and that allows for this ability called Deadeye. So what Deadeye does is you might possibly notice like some of the bullets are behaving like weird. Bullets will slow down when they're directly in front of you, so allowing you to kind of like dodge around bullets. It's kind of a neat little feature, but it takes a little bit of getting used to, because it's kind of like, wait, what the heck happened with that bullet? In addition to the enemy bullets generating gold when you destroy the enemies and canceling them, if you are in the guard mode, then you will also get gold for all the bullets that you end up like canceling, something to keep in mind. So if you're looking for high scores, this Black Label is definitely the way to do it. It's actually a lot of fun to play. In addition to that, Asagi, the character that I picked in the last one, is replaced by the character you see off here to the left, Satuday, who's been enemy in both the first Espgaluda and this one as well. So you get to play as an enemy character, which is a pretty neat feature. And yeah. And it's kind of just like scratching the surface of what we have here, but there's also some changes to the Ascension mode as well. Just like, well, this is just crazy, and you can kind of just see how like all the canceling like is going on there. The mode doesn't like necessarily change right off the bat, and all the multipliers are still existing even though we're not in like Ascension mode. Really, like this one is just like so satisfying and fun to play. But my favorite of the three modes is actually Arrange, which I'll go and show you now. Alright, so to show off Arrange, just to make things a little bit easier, I'm just starting the game from the very beginning. So, not firing, you can go and see that the enemies are firing two-colored like bullets. They're firing both blue and red. And that's not with it being in like Absolute Ascension or Ascension Over mode. So, what like this mode brings to the table is actually something really unique. So let's get some enemy bullets on screen. You see, my shots are canceling out the blue shots, my normal shot. If I happen to switch to the rapier, suddenly I'm canceling the enemy's red shots. So it's got this really awesome, almost like Ikaruga-esque effect where, okay, we gotta go and cancel the blue shots, now we gotta go and cancel the red shots. And it like looks different when you turn on the Ascension mode as well, out of necessity, because things are like different. It's not possible to cancel the purple bullets now, so that's the difference, and that's why like it can't just use like just straight purple colors, and it has to have something a little bit different. So I love that they kind of like made a mode that changes things up and introduces like something that's kind of like Ikaruga. This boss fight actually will be a good way to show it. So canceling the blue bullets, canceling the red bullets, canceling the blue bullets, canceling the red bullets, just like crazily swapping back and forth to get the most canceling effect you possibly can out of the whole like gameplay. And it's just fun. I love having like a different take on like the game itself. Like it's almost like, well, they did kind of give it to a different creator to kind of create the idea, and it's wonderful that you've got all these different versions, as not even as like extra DLC or whatnot on this, and we haven't even scratched the surface for the last version that's on there. And there's other changes as well with all the bullet canceling and the Ascension. Like I said, this game is just full of so much. We're not even going to get to the Omake mode because I haven't really had the chance to go and dive much into that and even explore how things are different in that mode. So as far as the minus flavors, the big one I have on this one is the confusing tutorial, which is kind of just like, it almost feels like it's a machine translation of the Japanese manuals, which are not great. They are confusing, and it's definitely coming from a standpoint where they assume you know what's going on in the game already. So that, like, you can kind of get an idea of what's going on, but some of it you're just going to be like, what? And you just have to play it to actually like fully understand. In addition to that, the localization does feel a bit half-assed. I really appreciate Livewire for bringing this title to like a wider audience, but at the same time I wish they'd put a little more effort into a proper localization, just like doing a better job explaining the tutorials, or even like editing, because there's like editing errors all over the place. It's just like things like that would have been really helpful. One of the biggest things I have with the localization, so everywhere in the tutorial it refers to the bullet time as Ascension, but if we look at the controller, does it say an Ascension here? It does not. It has the Japanese term for it, Kakse, which can be really confusing for somebody if they didn't know that was what that means. So that's a real big like a beef from my point. It's a super lazy to go and see that sort of incorrect translation where you've got like it being translated one way in one location but a different way in a different location. That aside, that's the biggest problem I have with it. The rest of it, like right off the bat, plus flavors, this game has incredible value. All those different versions of this game available to you for kind of a bargain bin price is just like insane. I can't stress that enough. And then you've got, so one thing I haven't really stressed on is just how beautiful. I mean, it's a crazy bullet hell, so it's sometimes really hard to see, but the backgrounds and the enemies we're fighting are such gorgeous pixel art that in a lot of the modes I turned the smoothing off because I just want to go and see the beautiful pixel art. And then you just have the excellent cave quality and attention to detail that they were known for back in this era. So I highly recommend this title, especially if you like bullet hells and you're a fan of shoot 'em ups in general. The downside is this one is very much a bullet hell that takes a lot of effort to learn the systems to master, and it's not going to be one that's relatively forgiving and accepting of beginners, so that's something to keep in mind. Still, with the kind of value it has, I don't think this would be a bad place to start your dive into the world of bullet hells. Alright, that'll just about wrap it up for this week's episode of Shoot 'em Up Saturday. As always, I want to thank you so much for joining me this week. I hope you have a wonderful week enjoying all this awesome gaming that's out there, and I look forward to seeing you again next week.